Sejam muito bem-vindos a mais um videocast especial diretamente da terceira conferência de escola austríaca realizada em São Paulo pelo Instituto Ludwig von Mises Brasil. Hoje eu tenho a honra de entrevistar Jeff Trucker, que é presidente da Laissez-Faire Books e consultor editorial do Mises.org, além de acadêmico adjunto do Mackinac Center for Public Policy e parte do corpo docente da Universidade Acton. Okay, yes. In your first speech, you're talking about the intellectual property.
Yes.
I would like to ask to explain your argument about the intellectual property.
Oh, you want me to explain it in short?
Yes.
Okay, it's a very difficult. Well, the short form of it is that the only reason we really need property in the world is because we have to allocate goods that are scarce. So, for example, there's a competition over this iPad that you happen to be holding. If you're holding it, then I can't hold it. And if I'm holding it, you can't hold it. And if we have an argument, we just have to kill each other, right? Or we can establish a system called exchange, which presumes property rights. So that's the reason there were property rights. I mean, there wouldn't be a need for property rights in a world where everything is abundant, like the German word Schlaraffenland. It's like a make-believe land where you can get everything you want. So, for example, when it rains, when hail comes, they're like sugar cubes coming down. And all food is available for you. For example, the pigs that run around are already cooked and they have forks stuck in them, so you just reach in and eat the pig. It's from an old Grimm's fairy tale, right? But it's a world where you can get everything you want. But that is not our world. We live in a world of scarcity. So because we live in a world of scarcity, you have to have the assignment of property rights, which permits exchange, and out of which comes prices and allocations and all the things we call economics. But the world of ideas is completely different, because the world of ideas has infinite goods. And by that I mean that they can be multiplied without end. You can have a thought and express it, and I can take that thought with me and take it with me and express it over there, and it doesn't take it away from you. And it's not stealing. It's just copying. So in a perfect world, everything would be copyable, right? So for example, I went to a buffet at lunch today, and I picked up a piece of ham. So what if I picked up that piece of ham, put it on my plate, and poof, another piece of ham came immediately to replace it, right? Well, that's kind of the way ideas are. They can be reproduced again and again and again. So therefore, you don't need to assign any property rights to them. And so in fact, it's perfectly preposterous to attempt to do so. In the real world, ideas are always a combination of other ideas, meaning that we must constantly be in a position of taking good ideas and making them our own. It's not really taking, because you're not taking them away from anything. All you're doing is reproducing that idea. So in that world, you don't need property rights on ideas. As a matter of fact, intellectual property did not even exist before the nation state became a very mature and large and coercive and aggressive institution and institutionalized them. First in England as a means of censorship, and then in the United States, and then in France, and then all over the continent. But things like patents and copyrights weren't even global until the very last part of the 19th century. So they rely on state legislation. Property rights in the real world can be created without the state. All we do is homestead, right? No state, but we still have property rights. It's a normal, natural thing. Intellectual property, what is called intellectual property, is entirely a creation of legislation. It's an artificial and coercive means by which non-scarce goods are made scarce solely to benefit certain producers. So it becomes a means of a sort of a mercantilism. It's a means of creating monopolies to benefit certain large institutions at the expense of everybody else. And never forget that the imposition of intellectual property always coerces third parties that don't know anything about it. For example, if you draw a picture right now on this piece of paper and say it's my copyrighted picture, a person on the other side of the room who's never seen your picture is thereby forbidden from drawing the same picture, unless they ask your permission, and then you're in a position to be able to charge them. Now, this is a preposterous system. It could only be created by something as stupid as government. That's my short.
How about the Ayn Rand conception?
Yeah. So
Ayn
Ayn Rand made a mistake because she saw that beautiful things were happening as a result of capitalist production, and she just got confused. I'm sorry to say. Ideas were very important to her, but just because something's very important doesn't mean that it has to be property, right? So she believed in ideas, and I think she was right to believe in ideas, but she made a mistake. And I'm afraid in Ayn Rand's case, this one mistake caused her a great deal of intellectual error and also a lot of personal misery. And this is an interesting story to me because I admire Ayn Rand very much. And when I read about her life, I wish she had had a happier life. But one of the reasons she didn't have a happier life is that the more people she influenced, the more she regretted that influence. Like she would look out over a crowd she was speaking at, and they were all her disciples. Now, most people would say, wonderful, I've influenced all these people. She, on the other hand, would look at them and think, parasites, thieves, they're living off my property, my ideas. So she didn't like them. And it made her sad. The more influential she became, the sadder she became because she felt like she was being taken from. So I'm afraid that this one small error imposed on her a lot of sadness. And I hope that libertarians now understand that she did in fact make an error. Yeah. It's too bad.
In short, how do you define capitalism? How much of this do you have now? And if it's possible to measure, because there's some index that say how free the markets are in the countries. That I don't buy those, but is your impression about those also?
Yes. So the question concerns how do you define capitalism, and this is a problem because lots of people on the left have a confused notion of what constitutes capitalism. And my feeling about that is that if we're going to argue about definitions, it's a kind of a waste of time. I mean, if a left-winger comes up to me and says, well, look, I'm against capitalism because look at all the bailouts that occurred in 2008, I'll just say, okay, let's change the name. Let's call it a banana, or whatever you want to call it. I defined capitalism, or I'm glad to not define capitalism, get rid of the word. What I favor is a perfectly free economy, by which I mean the property rights are secure, and there's complete freedom of exchange, and the right to accumulate wealth, and the right for any individuals to associate with any other individuals on peaceful terms so long as there's no aggression. That's what I like to call capitalism. If you want to call it somebody else, you can call it somebody else. But yes, every system in the world today, and as a matter of fact, every system throughout all of human history, is something of a mixture. So Mises was once asked the question, how do you know for sure if on balance a system is capitalistic or socialistic? And his test was whether or not the country had a stock market. I think that's a fairly decent, that's a decent thing. So when you see a country get a stock market, you know it's turning towards capitalism. Now there's other problems, like for example, many corporations today are living off government favors, right? In fact, quite a few are. Do they cease to be capitalistic? And there I would propose there's another test that you can use. Is the main motivating force behind the decisions every day that a corporation takes, is it to serve the customer or is it to serve the government? That's a good test. So I think if you're serving the customer, on balance, you're a capitalistic institution. If you're serving the state, on balance, you are something else, a fascistic or socialistic institution. I think this is why I keep talking about this importance of intellectual property here. Many large corporations are benefiting from intellectual property in a way that distorts their decision making. So much of production today is devoted to acquiring patents, keeping patents, suing others for violating your patents. This is a tremendous waste of resources, economic resources, all of which could be going to real investment and real production and real service to society, and it's wasted on defending these fake rights. Most internet companies, for example, would be very happy to give up their patents if they knew that everybody else would do the same. The only reason they keep them is for defensive reasons. So it's a very regrettable situation. By creating intellectual property, the state has put many corporations in a bad situation. It's like an occasion of sin, you know, as we say in theology.
In the last years, the state is advancing very fast, related to economic freedom, but with civil liberties like the liberty to smoke. We have in the years before smoking ban laws approved, and we had drinking driving laws approved very recently, 5 years maybe. And in the U.S., you there have this kind of law for a long time. And I would like to know if you felt freer in Brazil than in the U.S., and if you think the U.S. is already a police state.
Yeah. Well, one test of this is, you know, the United States has the largest prison population in the world. The United States, land of the free, home of the brave, has the world's largest prison population. 80% of those people have never committed any real crimes against person. I can order whatever drinks, I can smoke, I can walk, I can do anything I want. This feels like freedom.
Recently, you wrote an article on the celebrating the social media like Twitter. I would like to explain.
Yeah, well, my argument is that social media makes it possible for you to accumulate for yourself, as an individual, your own network. And your network is part of your personal capital, really. This has not been possible before. Used to, we were all kind of isolated individuals, so that if we worked for one place and we moved to another place, it's always like starting over. You had to kind of start over wherever you moved to, and all of your associations were only in your physical vicinity, you know. And if you moved away from that physical realm, you moved away from your associations. You lose half your power. I mean, half your influence. You lose all your influence, all your power. So we're always starting over all the time. This has been true throughout all of history until social media. Now here you have an amazing thing. You're able to develop geographically non-contiguous associations. I can have friends all over the world, and they become part of who I am, you know? So my Twitter account belongs to me. And if I move to Brazil and want to start over, all my associations come with me. I mean, how wonderful is that? And same thing with Facebook. Wherever I happen to be, whomever I happen to be associated with, wherever I happen to work, I still carry this with me. So people that are looking at social media and say, well, that's really silly, you wasting all this time on Facebook. It's not a waste of time. Because your friends, your associations, those are part of who you are. And the more you can form that and shape that in a way that benefits yourself, the more you are valuable as a human being. And digital media has made this possible for us. So I would urge anyone who is right now sort of thinking, I don't want to be on these silly things, that's just a bit of a waste of time. You are wrong. Change your mind right now and get on every social network and start building your friendships and your associations and your influence among those people. They become valuable to you, and you become valuable to them, and then you can have a brighter future for yourself. That's why I think it's important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Tucker, thank you very much.
Sure. It's wonderful.
And thank you again for teaching me to tie my bow tie. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, great to be here.